And so the Hugh Freeze experiment goes on in earnest on the field here very soon, just a few weeks on the plains at Auburn for spring practice. We got Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. This is a unique channel, folks. Check it out on YouTube. They talk Auburn. I'm not talking Auburn football. I am talking Auburn football, basketball, baseball, not just sports, the Auburn community as a whole. Check it out right here on YouTube. We appreciate Kyle being here. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well. Obviously, going through any transition period with a regime again in 2 years leaves with it a lot of questions and a lot of, I won't call it anxiety, but a lot of just waiting to figure out what we can figure out about what this is going to look like going forward. And there's a lot of time to wait. The excitement of the recruiting cycle is done. Spring's kind of almost here. So for me personally, it's just kind of sitting in that holding period as it relates to Auburn, and just kind of, I'm just excited to figure out what we can figure out.
Kyle, those expectations are tied to recruiting first and foremost, as they always are everywhere. And Hugh Freeze brought in what is ranked the 18th best class in America and a strong finish, which included 21 players signed.
Yeah, it was very impressive what he was able to do in such a short amount of time. And I would love to actually sit down with Hugh Freeze and ask him what he thought when he walked into the situation, when he actually realized what needed to be filled, what roles needed to be filled, recruiting high school kids wise and transfer wise when he arrived. Because the amount that was brought in, it seemed like every day a new transfer, a new commit was coming in. And really, honestly, let's just be real about this. It was mainly because the spots were open. You had to fill them. Everybody saw the playing opportunity there. So that was a huge part, a factor that he had with him to be able to recruit these guys here. But I think a lot of people are excited about that football facility too. So it makes sense that a lot of these guys, a lot of these transfers that have one more year, that want to kind of go out with a bang, do something special, come be a part of a transition period, it would make sense that they would want to come here. But just what he was able to accomplish, his staff, those that remained from the previous staff and those that came over with him, is just absolutely outstanding. You know, I always stress to people to not focus too much on the rankings, but you can see just from that alone, going from, I think, 60th somewhere, maybe even below that, to up in the teens, depending on who you look at. That's an incredible feat for this coaching staff.
Kyle, any particular players that you think may make an immediate impact?
I do. I will give you one especially that I'm super excited about. And I love how much he is embracing, obviously, not just being an Auburn football player, but in his final year that he'll play college football, being just part of the Auburn community, because that's what we're all about in the channel. Yes, we focus on the sports, as you said, but we go so much more than that. And this guy is just diving right in to the culture, and that is Elijah McAllister, the transfer out of Vanderbilt of all places. He's going to be probably, he could play anywhere, honestly, defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, depending on who you talk to, you'll hear different things. But his leadership, his charisma, that I watched a few videos of him, that he's going to carry out on the field and off the field, for me, is what is going to make him probably one of the leaders of this transition year. And obviously it's going to take more than a year probably, but for me, what he brings in ability, leadership, is going to be invaluable for this team. And so I think that's somebody that you really need to pay attention to if you're an Auburn fan. And then obviously everybody's excited about all these offensive linemen that were brought in transfer wise, whether you're talking about Avery Jones, Dylan Wade, several others. I mean, those are just the ones that have been positions of needs to get things right, and they did it this time in the transfer portal.
Kyle Loomis on the line with us here at the Voice of College Football to talk up the Auburn Tigers with spring practice just a few weeks away on the plains. We'll get to the quarterback situation here, Kyle, as we take everyone through the offense. Robbie Ashford had a rough go in spots last season, 49% completion percentage, as many interceptions as touchdowns. What is your thought process about his development and what the competition looks like?
Well, really, the competition to me right now doesn't look that much of a competition at this moment. I'm trying to get everybody used to the idea that Robbie Ashford's the quarterback next year. Now, he has to go out there and earn it. He has to go through practice, reps, all that stuff. We all understand that. We know that. But it is his job to lose right now. You've still got TJ Finley, who's here. Depending on who you talk to, you will hear that the notion is that he's going to finish out his spring, graduate, and then maybe move on to something else. We'll see if that follows through and actually happens. But for now, he's part of the team. He's part of the equation. So we have to factor him in. You've also got Holden Gerner, who's going to be a redshirt freshman. He spent 1 year, he played like 2 snaps, I think. And they were a rough 2 snaps that he had to come in when Robbie Ashford got hurt for some time. So those are really the big 3. You also got Hank Brown in the mix, who was brought over with Hugh Freeze. One of those guys that not a lot of people would expect to start, but he's at least going to factor into the competition. So those are the 4 names right now. Does Auburn bring in a transfer quarterback from somewhere for this year, especially if TJ Finley leaves? I would think so. But right now, I'm trying to get everybody used to the idea that Robbie is the guy. And yes, as you said, rough year. Every quarterback had a rough year for Auburn last year. But who knows what can happen with a different mindset, a different style of teaching, of coaching under Hugh Freeze. I mean, we've seen, the storyline you hear a lot. Look what he did with Malik Willis and what he's now in the NFL. Obviously, in his first year, kind of had some up and downs, but had huge success during his time at Liberty. So a lot of people are correlating Robbie to that type of story. And I'm a big fan of that, especially if it happens.
Also, to complete the picture on Robbie Ashford, a bit of a disclaimer here that if, it's a complete position running and passing, and the element that he provides there, 710 yards and a 4.6 yards per carry. So if you're unfamiliar about the way they keep stats in college, those include sacks. So when a quarterback is averaging almost 5 yards per carry with the sacks thrown in, that's a pretty major bit of damage that he did on the ground, 700 plus yards and 7 touchdowns as a running quarterback. So that has to be taken into account as well.
Yeah, he does. Listen, his legs are obviously his biggest weapon right now. But if you'll remember back to the Iron Bowl, I don't know how many people watch that. And this is just one throw, but there's times we've seen some flashes of brilliance. But I just remember this one throw distinctly into the back of the end zone, and it looked like something that Joe Burrow threw, during his time here at college and is continuing on to the NFL. I remember just kind of having to watch that on replay. So the guy has ability, whether it's throwing, but especially running. And that's what he really brings to the table in a Hugh Freeze offense. Hugh Freeze, obviously, I won't say somewhat similar to a Gus Malzahn offense. Having mobile quarterbacks is what they're best suited for. So that obviously sets it up very well for Robbie to maintain his leadership role in that number 1 spot at the quarterback position.
All right, Kyle, I am going back and I'm going to check out that throw in the Iron Bowl. I watched the Iron Bowl. I do not remember that particular throw, as Bama won by about 3 scores. It wasn't an annihilation. It was a fairly competitive game.
Yeah.
49-27 comes to mind, something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to block it out of my memory, so thank you for jogging that.
Well, you've got a few to block out, but actually Gus Malzahn, obviously, he held his own in that series more than just about anybody else. We'll move on to the running back position. Tank's gone. He was a monster, of course. Caught 30 balls out of the backfield. That kind of surprises me a bit. Jarquez Hunter is a reputable back himself. He's really good. So Jarquez Hunter, 6.4 yards per carry. He's back.
Yes, very excited about Jarquez Hunter. I'm excited about this backfield, regardless of who you talk about. The big disappointment, as you addressed, Tank Bigsby. To me, he's going to go down as not the most underappreciated running back, but I don't think his full potential was ever realized here, because what he did was as a freshman was incredible. And then the offensive line continued to get, for whatever reason, worse and worse, or at least not get much better. So he had very limited support. You pointed out how much he caught the ball, especially last year. And that's by design, because they were having so much trouble creating, not just for him, but the running backs as a whole, opportunities right up the gut. And so trying to get him out into open space where he can use that momentum, because he literally was a tank. So I will miss him. Obviously, it's going to be a big hole to fill, but Jarquez Hunter has got the skill set to be able to do that. He's a little bit smaller of a running back, but he is so fast, and he doesn't run like he's a small back. He runs with some ferocity that at times last year rivaled, and previous seasons as well, rivaled Tank Bigsby. So I have no qualms about relenting that to him and making peace with the fact that he is now the go-to guy at the number 1 running back spot. You also got to look at Brian Body, transfer coming in from South Florida. A lot of people are excited about what he'll do as an upperclassman coming in and filling a gap there that's left by Tank Bigsby. And then Damari Alston as well. He's shown a few flashes here and there. He kind of feels to me like the running back of the future, along with Jeremiah Cobb. who just signed with this recruiting class and will be here soon enough. To me, I have no worries about this running back room because we've got different types of backs that you can utilize in different situations, obviously led by Hunter.
No worries about the running back room, but you mentioned if Tank Bigsby has issues finding space to
Yes.
to push the ball ahead, then the offensive line is obviously an issue. Is
Yes.
there hope that there could be meaningful steps forward this year?
Yes, I think so. I think when you look at just a complete changeover of things, I hate talking bad about players and I hate, not, and sometimes being a little bit brutally honest. And it's been that way for 2 to 3 years with this offensive line. So I do think that they're going to at least be different. And I think different is good at this point. There's been a lot of the same, maybe some at the back end of the season, there seemed to be a little bit of improvement, especially as the former staff started to be removed from the equation and some new ideas, some fresh ideas under Cadillac Williams were brought into the fold. And then you also saw the running backs, obviously benefit from that somewhat. So to me, the hope really is in there's something different. And you've got a lot of transfer guys coming in to be excited about that offensive line. They're going to help the running backs.
Well, let's move on to the wide receiver position. You had mentioned that Shedrick Jackson and his 16 receptions are gone. But other than that, a lot of guys coming back.
Yes. So this is a room that's going to be very, very familiar to a lot of people. One or two new names there, and just in terms of maybe production wise, but Nick Mardner is the transfer that's coming in out of Cincinnati, a big, tall wide receiver. I think he's 6'6", something like that. So a humongous target for Robbie Ashford to throw into the equation. Guys like Javarius Johnson, Coy Moore are going to be your probably go-to wide receivers, the familiar names as well. You got Malcolm Johnson Jr. Camden Brown is a guy that a lot of people are excited about, a big wide receiver target too. I kind of have visions of him and Nick Mardner on opposite sides of the field of each other and just watching defensive backs try to figure out which tall guy they're going to go after. And there's plenty of other names as well. To me, the big question going into spring is, will all these guys that I didn't even name them all be here at the end of spring practice? My hunch with the transfer portal availability, probably not. But there'll be a lot of familiarity, and hopefully someone is going to step up here and make this their room, take the leadership role at that wide receiver position. We've had that in Shedrick Jackson in some ways, but we've needed that leadership along with that leadership production. Is it going to be a Coy Moore, Javarius Johnson, maybe a Camden Brown or Nick Mardner or anybody else? The questions remain out there, but it's a room with familiarity and excitement that I'm really excited to watch.
Mardner caught 19 with the Bearcats, 3 touchdowns in 2022. You'd mentioned before we started to record John Samuel Schenker, 20 catches last year, gone from the tight end position. Is there an obvious candidate there, or we'll just have to wait and see?
I think a lot of people are excited about, again, I keep saying transfers, but transfers is just the story for this team this year in a transitory period. Rivaldo Fairweather out of FIU coming in, a lot of excitement when he was signed in this recruiting cycle. So I think that's where everybody's mind is going to go. But we forget that there's going to be other names here that have been here for quite some time. Whether some of them stay too would probably be the bigger question, because I believe some of them are now seniors and have not seen their production or their playing time increase all that much. So yes, John Samuel Schenker, much like Tank Bigsby, are going to be the ones that you really miss as part of this offense, because they were leaders in so many ways, especially statistically. I think John Samuel Schenker is the leading reception tight end. I think you brought that up. That it's a huge piece of this puzzle that's going to be missing. I'm not super worried about it. I'm just excited to see the opportunities that abound for maybe Fairweather, Luke Deal, Tyler Fromm, those type of names.
Fairweather played a lot of football at FIU, 22 games in his career in this past season, 28 catches, 15 yards per reception. That's getting downfield for a tight end, and 3 touchdowns.
Yes. Yeah. They're really excited about those numbers. I think really Auburn has just needed, whether it's wide receivers or tight ends, just some size to throw to and be consistent, be a consistent person that can actually catch the ball and utilize them in that way. Because a lot of the times last season, the tight ends, especially the back half, were being utilized to help in the run game more so than being utilized catching. And that was by necessity. My hope is, as we've already addressed with the offensive line, if that improves, as a lot of people expect it to do, we can start utilizing these tight ends a little bit more in the passing game and make this a little bit more versatile of an offense under Hugh Freeze.
Kyle Loomis, E2C Network, for all things Auburn right here on YouTube. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by. We will have to track you down and talk some defense.
Oh, I love talking defense. We'll do it again soon.